In this section, we want to start off talking about percentiles, quantiles, and quartiles, which are all referred to as measures of location because they tell us where a particular data value falls relative to the rest of the data. Let's consider example 1, where we're told to assume that on a standardized test, you scored in the 87th percentile in math. So part A asks us, what does that result mean? That would mean that you performed better than 87% of all other test takers. Whatever score you received put you at the 87th percentile. And again, 87% of people came up with some score that was lower than that. In part B, we're asked to convert the 78th percentile to a quantile. We're introducing some new language, maybe something we haven't heard before. Percentile tends to pop up, especially with standardized tests throughout elementary and high school. A quantile is actually almost exactly the same thing. We just take that percentile and we divide it by 100. So converting the 78th percentile into a quantile, we would get the 0.78th quantile. So there's really no difference between quantiles and percentiles, except that percentiles range from 0% to 100%, and quantiles range from 0 to 1. So if we know how to convert back and forth between decimals and percents, we know how to convert back and forth between percentiles and quantiles. Two words for almost nearly the same measure, or the same measure, just a different way of representing that value. In example 2, now we want to assume that on a standardized test, you scored in the 75th percentile in math. Part A, we're asked, what does that mean? This is the same answer as part A in example 1. You performed better. I'm writing very sloppy, so we'll start that over. You performed better than 75% of the other testers. In part B, now we want to take a percentile and convert it into a quartile. We're going to go ahead and just establish the answer to this, that the 75th percentile would be the same thing as the third quartile. And then we'll talk a little bit about what quartiles are and how we come to that conclusion. Quartiles are just another way of dividing up our data. When we talk about percentiles, we divide it between 0 and 100. For quantiles, we divide it from 0 to 1. With quartiles, we take all of our data and divide it up into 4 chunks, 4 different groups. So the first quartile is the same thing as the 25th percentile because it's a quarter of that whole. 25th percentile is a quarter of 100, or the 100th percentile, and that would be the same thing as the 0.25 quantile, just making that simple conversion. The second quartile is the same thing as the 50th percentile, so half of the data is below it, which would be the same thing as the 0.5 quantile. The third quartile is the same as the 75th percentile, which would be the 0.75 quantile, and the fourth quartile is the 100th percentile, or the 1 quantile. So all we're doing is just talking about different ways of breaking up our data. We start with the idea that we can break it up from 0 to 100%, with that measure being how much of the data is less than that value. We can convert between percentiles and quantiles, where a quantile is just that percentile divided by 100. Or instead of talking about that range from 0 to 100%, we can talk about taking all those data values and chunking them up into fourths. And that gives us 4 quartiles, 4 different groups. I'm sorry, 4 different scores that chunk our data into those fourths.